Opportunity at the end of the webinar to ask any questions that you have. Joining me today, I'm Peter Elmalis, the Program Manager for the Forestry Division. Joining me is Johnny Huang, who is our Regional Distribution Leader and heads up the distribution team for forestry. I've been in the industry for 23 plus years, and all 23 years I've been serving forest products insurance. You can go to the next slide, Jillian, please. Darcy, sorry. Victor's Forest and Logging Program was established over 30 years ago. Our team is comprised of seasoned underwriters and underwriting assistants who have an average of more than 10 years experience underwriting in the forestry niche, which separates us from many of our competition. We write in all states with the exception of Louisiana and New York. We also have an exclusive relationship in California. So California at this time is not open or part of our open brokerage strategy. We have an exclusive relationship in California, which is headed up by a team in our Sacramento office. We have a strong carrier relationship, which is going into its 6th year, and we continue to work with the carrier to find areas of growth opportunity. We focus on logging and lumber hauler risks with at least 3+ power units. We have the ability to write the GL, including loggers broad form, auto, inland marine for the logging sector, and excess up to 2 million, which is usually provided 1x of 1, and we go 2x of 1 on our preferred risks. The auto and the loggers broad form are not available on a monoline basis without making an exception, and they're typically offered as a package solution. Next slide, Darcy. Victor also provides industry-specific management content that helps educate you and your insureds on important topics, including industry-specific intel, claim scenarios that we work exclusively with our carrier, and there's not through a TPA, risk mitigation tips and guidance, which is done in conjunction with a full loss control team, both provided by Victor as well as by our current carrier. A lot of this information is available and accessible on our website, or it can be done through our loss control contacts, our claim contacts, as well as anybody that's working from an underwriting assistant or management on the team. Next slide. As I mentioned, Johnny Huang is also on the call, and he heads up the distribution team from a forestry standpoint. Our distribution team is located across the United States and provides support on the forestry program as well as the multitude of other Victor programs and products. Distribution for forestry is on an open broker basis, and as I said, California is the only caveat to that, and we do not currently work with any wholesale relationships. Probably the key to this webinar is, beyond what our appetite is within the forestry space, is what gets your submission to the top of the pile and gets the interest and piques the interest of our underwriting team. A complete submission would include our Victor Forestry Supplemental, and if inland marine is applicable, we do have a inland marine supplemental as well. 5 years of currently valued loss runs, applicable accord applications completed, complete driver's list, and we'll run the MVRs, as well as a little brief description of the risk and opportunity, as well as some form of target or expiring premium. The bullet there, as far as open communication on the opportunity, is really kind of near and dear to my heart. For the agents on this call and for our team, a lot of times what works best for our team is a quick phone call with either myself or an underwriter on the team that can quickly identify whether the account's eligible. What that does is saves valuable time for you as the agent and the insurer to definitely find out whether at least the risk is within our appetite and potentially eligible, to be quoted, and then, presented a quote to you. Some of that information that we can discuss over the phone is any unique claims that normally maybe the loss ratio is high, but there's a unique scenario that puts us still within eligibility of the program. Current target pricing. In regards to that, we are very competitive across the country against all the other programs or carriers that are in this space. So it is very important to understand where we're at. It's not sitting there saying that, hey, we want to know all the information. It's really, in my mind, a benefit to you as the agent to be able to discuss with your insureds to identify whether or not, hey, this is a risk that's well below market value from a pricing standpoint, where there is some room in the premium, and we can really work with you to try to improve that, which is, obviously an ever-going topic in the industry, and, looking for ways to save money where margins are thin currently, and prices, especially on auto, continue to rise. So that's just an avenue that we can go down, and will save everybody, time. If you prefer the traditional way of submitting an account, and finding out whether it's eligible, then all the items that are listed there in the bullets are the key to a complete submission, and what gets your submission cleared in that process. Next slide. We'll open this up at this time to any questions.
All right, thanks, Peter. We do have some questions coming in. The first question, what if the risk is a new venture, or it has less than 5 years of insurance history, but it has more than 5 years of experience?
Yeah, so those are things that I would consider on a one-off basis. Typically, we're looking at risks that at least have 2 to 3 years of experience to qualify immediately. There are a lot of scenarios that, in the example, I think the question basically is if, hey, they have, 2 or 3 years or maybe 1 or 2 years on their own, but they work for somebody else in some capacity for more than 5 years. Those are risks that we will, determine and look at on an individual basis. And again, some of the other criteria as far as, what they did in the capacity working in the industry, where they, did they run their own team? Were they more in a supervisory position? Are they maybe family of a company where it's being passed down? So there's a few different scenarios that, even if they've only been on their own for a year or two, historically would be just, hey, we're going to decline that risk. But, there's definitely situations that would allow us to look beyond the current 1 or 2 years and possibly write the risk with the experience that they've garnered, through another organization. A lot of times it could be as simple as, they're then working for that other operation because that other operation has gotten too big. And even though they're going out on their own, they could even get a recommendation from the other organization that, is extremely helpful, that then we know we have a reliable and trustworthy insured that we can kind of go out on a limb for and look beyond just the fact that they've been on their own for 1 or 2 years.
All right. Now, will you entertain a timber broker that buys and sells only and does third-party through logging and hauling?
Yeah, so another area that's not exactly in our, wheelhouse, I would say, but one that, again, we look at, for our agents that we're writing with. Historically, we do write some of those exposures. Is it one that we're actively soliciting? I would say no. But again, depending on, the size of the account, where it's located, and just the overall scope of the risk would determine that, but wouldn't be an automatic decline.
Awesome. So is auto and GL truckers liability available without the logger's broad form?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just the loggers broad form is not available on a monoline basis,
Right.
like standalone, meaning that we won't just write the loggers broad form.
Thanks, Peter. Where do you write the most amount of business?
So, as I stated, we write in all states. I would say we have the heaviest concentrations of business, what I would consider the mid-Atlantic states from, the Virginia down the coast into the southeast, across to Texas, and then out to the West Coast would be our heaviest concentrations of business. We have started to delve into the Midwest and the Northeast. Historically, there are some regional carriers in those areas that present some pricing concerns. But again, those are areas that we're looking to grow, the carriers looking to grow. So if the Midwest or the Northeast is an area that you concentrate on, I'd love to have a conversation with you to see, where we would need to be pricing, and then we can determine whether or not it makes sense, for us to work on the particular risk. But our heaviest concentrations are in the Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, and the West Coast.
Okay. Is there a maximum limit threshold for equipment?
Equipment is an area that we've actively engaged recently. So those who are on the call, I took the program over here at Victor last August. So that is an area that we're actively pursuing, that we're looking to grow. So on the surface, I wouldn't say that there's a maximum limit right now that would be off the table. But another area that I would say our wheelhouse is probably, in the 1 to 6, 7, 8 million range as far as schedule, and things above that, again, we would look to make sure that we can be competitive, that, we have the coverage form that's needed, and then, what the opportunity is overall, to help you out and not put you in a bad predicament.
Okay. What is a normal turnaround time for quotes?
So we are an actively busy program, where we write probably $3 to $4 million worth of business on a monthly basis. So, as much as I would love to say, hey, you could send it in and we could have a quote for you tomorrow, the underwriters are working actively, on their books, trying to be 30 days in advance on their renewals, trying to give as much lead time on a new piece of business. We work on rushes. I would say, at the minimum that I would ask that you're giving us, somewhere between at least, 2 weeks lead time as far as your need by date. Can we do something sooner and quicker than that for the right opportunity? Absolutely. But the more time that you can give us with a complete submission, the better off that, I think all of us would be.
Okay. Do you need target premium if the expiring is listed?
No, and it's not. I know that's a touchy subject, and it's one that you can go round and round on. And as I said earlier, if I have the expiring premium, it gives me an idea, and that's where that conversation where I can quickly come back if the expiring premium is well below where we think we want to be, then I can actively give you a response quickly to say, hey, this is one that you have a good deal. If there's a better deal out there, it's unfortunately not going to be from us. So that's why we ask. But if I have one or the other, we can work with either one. It's just an added benefit to me to save you guys some time.
Awesome. Will you look at sawmills?
So I don't think I mentioned this, and I think I had it on my notes. So another area, the key, one of the important things is that our carrier relationship is going into its 6th year. And historically, being in this space, a lot of times after 4 or 5 years, carriers exit the space, and they don't have an interest. I can tell you it's just the opposite with our carrier. They're looking for areas to grow. The manufacturing side, the mills, is an area that I have a lengthy background in. and in an area that we are looking to actively pursue, not only from a casualty standpoint, but at some point hope to have the property capacity to help that space out. It's probably the biggest issue in that space right now is the property. So if we are able to garner some capacity, it will put us in a pretty prime position. Right now, I would say if you're interested in us looking at just a GL or auto opportunity for a mill, we can do it. I just think that there's some programs out there that are going to probably try to leverage their property abilities and probably not make it advantageous for you to split out the casualty lines. But, on a one-off basis right now, we have actively asked our carrier to start looking at those. And, depending on basically the carrier doesn't want an over concentration of whether it's lumber haulers, loggers, manufacturing risks in one neck of the country. So if we start writing, let's just say we start writing mills in the Southeast, GL and auto, and all of a sudden, we put $1 million on the books pretty quickly, and we're not doing that in other geographic pockets, we would probably be asked to slow down in the pocket where we are writing. So long answer to your question, but yes, but kind of one off here, one off there that we would look at it.
Right. Can you write inland marine on a standalone basis in states other than California?
Yeah, so at this time, we're not writing standalone inland marine anywhere. It is something, again, another part that I'm actively having dialogue with the carrier that if we want to write inland marine for the logging sector successfully, that eventually we will have to get to, a standalone product, but we don't currently have one.
All right, and a follow-up to that question, can you write commercial auto and log hauling on a standalone basis?
Is the question that whether we'll write contract haulers?
Came commercial auto and log hauling. Oh, yep, they just said yes.
Yeah, so currently we're really isolating contract haulers based on typically the size of those risks to some of our preferred agents.
All right. Are claims handled in-house or through a third party?
So claims are handled in-house at the carrier. So the carrier is not using a TPA. So I guess the answer to your question would be yes, that it's not in-house at Victor. It's in-house at our carrier.
Can you include property limits too, or just liability coverages?
Yeah, so right now we're not writing any property coverage, even incidental property.
All right. If an attendee has California logging accounts, can they submit to Victor?
At this time, they cannot. We have an exclusive relationship with the Associated California Loggers Association, which goes to one individual broker, and that business then flows into our program.
All right. What percentage, if any, is allowed for residential tree removal or trimming?
We look at those exposures kind of as an offset. If the answer, was just broad brush, we'd say we don't want any residential. So, as minimal as possible, but we do look at, each situation, on a unique basis. So I would say if I have to put a percentage on it, we wouldn't want any more than like 15 to 25% residential, typically even less than that.
Can insureds be involved in incidental firefighting operations?
Typically, the answer to that's going to be no, but again, we do look at those on a one-off basis, and if it's truly incidental, where maybe they're doing it, one time a year, and it's the right account, and everything else, looks good, then it is something we can entertain, but typically the answer to that is going to be no.
All right. Are cameras or telematics mandatory of your insured?
It's definitely puts the insured at a unique advantage. It's not mandatory, but definitely is one that, you know, puts a better bow on the risk that if they do utilize front-facing cameras, speed governors, any form of telematics. We do offer through our carrier, we do have a company that does offer telematic services at a charge, but it's a program that definitely increases the visibility for the account as far as what their drivers are doing, and definitely, you know, adds definitely advantage from a pricing standpoint and an overall underwriting standpoint when we're reviewing the risks. But it's not mandatory.
Right. Are there any notable exclusions? For example, no workaround structure, communication lines, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, again, we're not looking for companies that are exclusively working with utility companies or along highways, or, you know, have a heavier concentration of residential opportunities. I mean, those would be the biggest exposures that we're staying away from, as well as, you know, the firefighting exposures out on the West Coast, particularly. But those would be the, you know, the biggest areas. You know, in a traditional logging. Obviously, there's going to be exclusions in some more non-traditional logging opportunities, or where they're doing a lot more than logging, and you know, logging is just a percentage of what they do. But in a traditional logging operation, those would be the ones that we're typically staying away from.
All right. Well, it looks like we have gone through all of our questions at the moment. So, Peter, I'll go ahead and put your contact information up on screen. That way, if there are any questions that any of our attendees think of afterwards, they can get in touch with you.
Perfect. Just want to thank everybody for joining today. You know, this is one of the first webinars that I've done since I've started with Victor. We do plan to have additional webinars in the future that will be more, some of them may be more claims related, some of them may be more loss control informative related, you know, that will help you and your insureds. But anytime, you know, there's my contact there. Feel free to give me a call to discuss the program in more depth if you'd like to. And we look forward to building a relationship with everybody that was able to join us today. Thank you.